Hi, welcome, Dina.
Hi, Aliza. Nice to see you.
I'm really excited to have you here to discuss Lech Lecha. Lech Lecha, for myself, and I'm guessing you can tell me if I'm wrong, and the many like us, it was some form of calling, I think, that we've heard or we identified with in our lives that even brought us from Chul to this beautiful, amazing, blessed land. And it's not easy, it's difficult. And I think even being here, even once we've gotten here, our Lech Lecha journey it's not finished. It's a process. We all have a ways to go. And I wanted to talk about Lech Lecha with you and first open it up to you and anything you have to say and what you see. And what do you got for us, Dina?
Okay. Hi, Aliza again. And I just wanted to thank you for doing this. It's always such a treat for me because I'm so technically challenged and I want to share all this stuff. And I just kind of like only can do these little 5-minute clips on WhatsApp because that's the only thing I can get out there without it like messing up my whole phone and anyway, whatever. So this is really a treat for me. And Lech Lecha is that calling to go to Israel. But it's interesting. First of all, for me, I don't know so much because I wasn't personally called to come to Israel. My parents brought me here when I was 8, so I didn't really have much of a choice. So I don't really, actually think of it as like, oh, something propelled me to come to Israel. I just came, thank God, and I had an education here, and I grew up here. But I definitely see that people, and especially now, are really grappling with that decision and with that thought process. Should they come? Should they not come? And there's a few parshas that deal with this question. Also, when we get to Shlach, eventually, we have the question of the Meraglim, and do you see the bad and do you see the good, or do you see the good in Israel? But what I personally happen to learn in Nesiva Shalom, I'm sorry, I'm obsessed with, it's just my
I
thing.
love it. I love it.
Yeah, it's all good. In Lech Lecha it's very interesting because he points out that it's more of a broad goal in life that we're talking about. And it's Lech Lecha, the Nesiva Shalom basically is telling us that every single person has in his life a Lech Lecha, having nothing to do necessarily with Eretz Yisrael. I mean, eventually, Eretz Yisrael is going to be conducive to his fulfilling his purpose and mission in life, but each and every one of us has a purpose and a mission, a specific tikkun, and a specific thing that they are all moving towards, a destination. A destiny. We're all moving towards that destiny. And I think that with Lech Lecha, what Hashem is telling Avraham is that idea of going out. You need at some point to go away from your family, from your birthplace, from your culture, from your overall country. Like sometimes we think that it's not necessarily geographically leaving your country, but there's certain countries that have certain character traits that are prevalent or very noticeable or dominant. Like we just say, like if you live in the Middle East, you're hot-headed or you're like very, like say it like it is. Or if you're from Germany, you tend to be very yucky, like you're very punctual and certain things like that. So that's like a very country-oriented trait, okay? And on the other hand, you have things that are more connected to your family, which are a little harder to get rid of. Like I remember once, it was just came up in my mind a second, but like I remember once we were sitting at the dinner table with my in-laws. My in-laws were at the dinner table, and we're like, all of a sudden, like the food was completely finished, right? And I said, oh, the Cooper Smiths are big eaters. Like we're good eaters. Look at that. We finished all the food. It was just something so silly. And I was talking about my nuclear little Cooper Smith family. But my mother-in-law got all insulted and she said, well, I've seen the Slaters pack it in as well, meaning my family, you know, so my parents. So my poor children have on both sides, you know, Slater and Coopersmith. We are big eaters. There's nobody skinny in my family. We are struggling with that. So that's a tendency that it's like a family thing, right? So anyway, we have all these traits, and the Nasiva Shalom says this idea, which I love, is that we use everything that we have. We have all our circumstances. Some of us have tests. Some of us have tribulations. Some of us have tendencies that are difficult. But we use all of these things to move ahead and to go towards our destiny in life. And nothing is by mistake, and nothing is bad. It's all good for your destination. That's why it's Lech Lecha, Lehana'atcha, Letofatcha, for your good, for your benefit. This is all for your good. I mean, who doesn't want to fulfill their unique purpose in life? Right. So anyway, that's what I got, and I'm very inspired by that. But I want to hear what you have to say as well.
Oh, well, a couple of things that I hope I can't remember everything I want to say when you're speaking, because everything you say, I'm like, oh, and I'm trying to interrupt because I have a very bad, I guess you can say that's my culture. Interrupting people when they're talking, so I'm trying hard. But on the last point, I'll work backwards with what you said of taking all of these things, the culture from the places that you came from, your genetic, because if you say mi beit avicha, beit, your father's home, I always see it as beit. They always say beit is the woman, so I see the beit as the mother and avicha the father. So there's your genetic tendencies. There's the culture from the place you came from. All of that is important. And the reason why I love that you brought that up is because, especially now, it's still in my mind from after the high holidays and working on ourselves so much, is that it's a very important concept, is to take everything, your sin, your bad, your good, everything in your past, and to use it as a building block, and not to try and pretend it wasn't there, but instead use it as a stand on which you can be greater, to put your trophy on, so to speak. So I love the fact that in this parsha specifically, when God is telling Avraham that he has so much intended for him for the future, and in his growth process, and he adds a hey to his name, he doesn't change his name completely. He could have given him a whole full different name, but he says, no, you're still Avram, you're still all of that, everything that you've learned and you've gained from your past history is there, and just add the hey, that special. I mean, there's so much more to speak about when he changes his name. Hopefully I'll get there, but to add to that, not to take away, because all that is crucial to who you are, and that was given to you for a reason, to be the you are, and just to add, and even also Sarah. Sarah, she lost the yud, so I don't know. We got to talk about that. She got the hey, and I think that's important, but that's another conversation. But it's important to bring all that with us, and not to carry, because I think, unfortunately, a part of Jewish culture, and I don't think it's really a Jewish way in terms of intention, but we have a lot of guilt. We have a lot of guilt that we carry with us, and we try so hard to push it away, even from our thoughts and everything, because we have guilt associated with the bad that we've done, and it's so important just to keep it as knowing that we only achieved the greater heights today because of whatever it was, and not to carry that guilt and shame, but to wear it with pride, and just to have, God somewhere in the center of that, the Hashem. Mm-hmm. So I think that's it.
I wanted to just say that is actually what Nitzivat Shalom said as well, with regards to the words Lech Lecha, me. Like, he could have said, say me, leave your country, leave it behind, don't look back, right? And go out of, he said it a number of times, say me something or other, go away from and go out of. But here it's like, no, don't leave it behind. Use all that stuff. Don't even leave it, really. Lech Lecha. Start walking from there. Right. And you then develop your independence using all those traits and stuff that you got from your past.
Yeah, and now that you say that, it jogs my memory, because we come to Lech Lecha and everybody says, it's weird. Hashem's just coming to Avraham now. He's 75. We don't really know much, but we do have a couple of psukim before at the end of Noah to introduce Avraham to us. And I think it's crucial there. And I've heard this be explained that Avraham comes from Terach, and Terach had Avraham, Nachor, and Haran. And if you look in the Pasukim, and when it's giving all of the descendants and the lineage, we're told that Terach's father's name was Nachor also, and that he named his child Nachor after his own father, and that part of Avram's character of Hakarat Tov and understanding and appreciating God was a quality that he learned from his father, who had an appreciation for where he came from, and he named his son after his father. And Avraham saw this, and it was something that had an impact on who he was in terms of understanding that you need Hakarat Tov from where you come from. And then when he was analyzing where it was that he came from and came to the whole conclusion of the one and only God, he felt the need to show appreciation for that. And it's something that he learned from where he came from. And that's very important always to have that credit, to know that, and to know that, I mean, this is something that I was thinking about also in Parshat Noach, because when they had the whole discussion in Rashi, and what, was Noach, L'gnai Shvach, was he great? And then they compare him to Avraham. They said if he was in the time of Avraham, which he actually was, he would be considered groom. But what I always said is, Avraham had, as great as Avraham is, I'm not taking anything away from him, but he had, the Noah come before him, and he had the ability to learn through things that he saw before him. That doesn't take away from his greatness. He still, took the mantle, and he still moved on from there and got to obviously much greater heights. But he had to have on what to build. I think up there. So I like that you said that. So take all of that, and he did take all of that, and we see that. But I like what you said also in terms of the Lech Lecha is not necessarily talking when it's talking to each and every individual, and it's very important because not everybody can make it here, and there's many reasons why people can't make it here. It doesn't take away from the fact maybe they're supposed to be there, maybe they have a purpose there, whatever it is. But we all have our journey, our 10 nisyonot, or the how many stops in the desert. All that is the same, idea, is that we all have on what we need to build our character, and we have so much to learn from Abraham. And I think what always brings comfort, maybe for people who can't get here, that want to get here, is to see that even though God promised Abraham the land, he really, and you look closely at the words, it's L'zarecha. It wasn't for Abraham necessarily. He had to leave. He had to go down to Egypt. Yaakov also spent most of his life not in Israel. The forefathers that God was directly communicating they couldn't actually be here for a very good reason. And sometimes we can't be here for a good reason, but that doesn't mean that, we don't have the same processes that our forefathers, especially Abraham, went through in terms of our growth and getting there. And, who knows what's at the end of that picture. Maybe they can get here eventually, hopefully, whatever. But there's so much to learn in the process from everything.
Right. I mean, I think that the ideal is going to be El Ha'aretz Asher Arecha. Like, I mean, at least people should have that in their sights as a goal.
Right.
And they have to realize that at the end of the day, this is our destiny is going to be better fulfilled in Eretz Israel. Each and every Jewish person who has a spiritual, purpose in this world. It's not about just living, right? And it's not just getting through life. I mean, God forbid. And we know the idea that really the spiritual benefits of this country are definitely more beneficial, more advantageous than any other country. And, it's something to think about. And I'm not, God forbid, talking about people who, of course, want to be here and they just can't for whatever reason, but it's always in their mind and it's their goal and it's their idea of the ideal. But, sometimes religious people think, oh, the education is not as good in Israel and you don't get all these, spiritual benefits, or you get just as much spiritual benefit from being outside of Israel. And I think just, let's just put it in perspective that at the end of the day, even Lech Lecha, even each and every person's individual life, at the end of the day, is El Haaretz Asher Eka. That should be a goal, and there you will be able to fulfill your destiny in a much more spiritual way, much more of a connection with Hashem. Because Asher Eka is the idea of I will be seen by you more efficiently, more effectively, more accessibly in Israel, and we do see that. I think you and I probably notice it really because we're also like a little bit more. We have that tendency to look for the spiritual and to look to grow, but being here, you just realize that Hashem is with you. Hashem is with you. Hashem is just so much more accessible, and all these little things that could be wrong and are not so fun sometimes. In the end of the day, you realize, what? This is what my purpose is for. It's to get close to God. And if that's the purpose, then there's no question that it can be done better by being here.
Right.
I mean, it's my wish, and I'm not judging anybody, God forbid if they can't come, but that it should be a goal that we should realize this was Abraham's goal, and this is all of our goals.
Right. Yeah, I think a large part is really faith-based. It's hard for people that don't have that natural inclination because, I mean, for us personally, when we made Aliyah, I knew that there was a lot of things that hung in the balance. There has a bit of you have to let go of that control. And I think that's important what you said with our Eka, that I will go. Of course, you have to make a plan. You can't just be irresponsible, but you make your basic plan. There's some people who are so touch control freaks that if they don't have everything perfectly lined up, they can't make that jump. But you have to, you get the basics, the responsible things set, and the rest, God will show you the way. You go, and God will show you the way. And for me, thank God, I've been seeing God's help a lot of steps of the way that I didn't know. Certain things I just didn't know, and I didn't know how it was going to be or how it was going to work out. And I think walking in the ways of trying my hardest to do what I knew is right, then really I do think God shows you which direction helps you, and so to speak. But that's hard. It's hard for people that aren't used to that way. I think in Israel, we're more inclined to think that way because Israel is such a miraculous country, and if you have your eyes open, you see the miracles constantly, and so the miracles becomes more of a natural sort of way in living in Israel, which actually brings me to the point when God does change his name. He says that you should no longer be called Avram, but Avraham. I was looking at that very closely because as in Bereshit and in Noach, it says Noach Hatalech, he walked with God, and we also saw in the parsha before we saw that phrase. Where is it? There's Noach, but there was also let's see, 1 second. I'm sorry about this. Chanoch. V'hitalech Chanoch et Elokim. Chanoch also walked with God. So, and then right before God changes Avram's name, he tells him to walk before me. So everybody says, that's the difference between Abraham and the other two, because Avram was someone to walk before, to show the way of God, as opposed to the other two. But it was fascinating when I looked at it, because right before God says, changes his name, he says, he introduces himself as Kel Shakai. He doesn't say Hashem. He says Kel Shakai, walk before me. And Kel Shakai is very grounded in this earth, in the nature, in things the way they were that God set. And then he says, walk before me, and he adds the hey, and then we talk about the ways of Hashem, meaning that that was really part and parcel, I think, the miraculous of, not being so worried and being bogged down as we see things in this world. But when you do the right thing, just, you know that there's a Hashem who's not bound by these rules, who's not bound by the rules of the earth. So do the right thing, walk in God's way, and know that there's Hashem, and just like walk before all the natural things. And Avraham what was that person? I mean, we're not told the story in the Chumash because, you know, miracles, we're not supposed to rely on miracles. We're not supposed to work with miracles. That's not really what our job is. And so we're not told about him being the miracle of Or Kasdim and being saved. But it's important not to work on fear at the same point, and to always do what it is that we know we're supposed to do, not based on those rigid rules that we think are confining us to not doing the right things. And that's so much of a basis. I mean, that was our basis of the Kriyat Yamsuf. That was Avraham getting out of Or Kasdim. And it's just, do the right thing. Don't worry so much, people. Do the right thing, because there's a God behind you. And you know, and look, and if it doesn't work out, because I don't believe in relying on miracles, but that shouldn't stop you from doing the right thing. You should be convicted and with enough conviction to do it, and then worry, because I think that's important. Life is just as good as your convictions are, and if you're willing to put them aside, because, you know, it's not always, unless of course I'm not talking about those extenuous, you know, circumstances, you know what I'm talking about, but I think that's all part and parcel of our beginning, of our history, of our future. I mean, our country was gotten on a miracle. There's so much about us that's miraculous, and I think it's just to keep, you know, it's good to know. It's good to know that there's a God who's above all that, that's standing behind us, and that we can just hopefully do the right thing and not worry so much. And I think that I don't like to get into politics and everything else, but I think that really should play a main important role in everything we do, in order to just never not do the right thing. The right thing should come first.
Wow. Based on what you're saying, I'm remembering that another thing I was reading here in Netivot Shalom is the idea that it's interesting. There's a midrash that says, it says 2 times Lech Lecha with regard to Abraham. One time is here, Lech Lecha, El Haaretz Asher Emi Moladetecha, and all that. And then at the end of next parsha, it tells Avraham to Lech Lecha El Eretz Moriah with regard to Akedat Yitzchak. And the Midrash actually says, Ein anu yod'im ezo chaviva im hashniya im harishona. We're not sure really which is the more dear test to Hashem. This first Lech Lecha of going, you know, leaving your family and taking your wife and children and everything that's going on in your, you know, your possessions, your family, basically walking and starting to find a new place to live. That's one nisayon. And the other nisayon is sacrificing your son. I mean, that you daven for and that you didn't have for 99 years, and like your whole future is wrapped up in this kid, and then you're supposed to sacrifice. I mean, what question is asking the Midrash, which is more dear to Hashem, this nisayon or that nisayon? So he answers, and it's a little bit based on what you were saying, because how much are you supposed to put in, and how much are you supposed to, like, what is actually harder on a regular basis, if it's like that one time, you know, mesirut nefesh, like, okay, I'm completely giving my all to God, which obviously is so incredibly difficult. Like, you're literally giving your life. It's even harder to give your kid's life, or to think that you're about to give your child's life rather than your own. So to give your life to Hashem, but it's a one-time thing, and it is like, you know, an incredibly high level that you just like have to garner all your strength and all your like everything you've ever thought that you would have to do, and you devote it to God. But it's like one time, or is that basic Lech Lecha me'artzecha u'moladetecha u'mibeit avicha. You're now changing your lifestyle a little bit, and you're ongoing this journey. You are now going towards your destination, towards your tikkun, with the everyday struggles, the little struggles, but not so little, you know. And if it's to come to Israel, if it's to change your life in whatever way, if it's to work on a character trait, those little everyday trials and tribulations and tests that Hashem puts us all through in order to reach our eventual goal and destination. You know, the Midrash is saying, oh, we're not really sure which is more important. It's really both important, and both a struggle. and both, you know, what we're meant to do in life.
It's interesting because when you brought up the Lech Lecha on both those tests, and some people say that Akira Yitzchak was the last test and Lech Lecha is
Yeah.
but it makes me think, and this is something that really is really important in my life in terms of I try really hard with this point, and I think that you made this to me in a different way. Is that Lech Lecha was the beginning of the journey, and it was to leave all your past behind. It was a test about leaving the past behind, and Akira Yitzchak seems like a test about the future, sacrificing the future. So there's sacrifice of the past, and there's sacrifice of the future. And I think that this is something that's crucial for each and every person, especially a mother, because in a mother, like and especially in the sandwich generation, right now I'm in that age where, you know, there's kids and there's parents, and you really, that's what your life seems to be all about, is your kids and your parents taking care of both. But God is saying, I feel to me, and I have to learn, is that if you had to, I mean, to sacrifice your past and your future, you're important. This moment's important. Not all about your past and your future. What you do at that moment is meaningful and important and just as impactful to God as your whole past and your whole future. And I think that's something that we really need to learn from Avraham. It's something that we see in Devarim, Hayom, Hayom, Hayom. And it's something I think is the undertone of everything in the Chumash, to teach us the crucial impact of a moment, because we undervalue the moment. And so I think that's what God's trying to teach us by this, is if he's asking for that we should understand that can change everything, the moment, you know.
That is fabulous. I love that. Wow.
Thank you.
And on that note,
you make me think. I didn't have this idea before you started talking. So I really,
okay. Hashem gives us all our ideas. Nothing is from us.
No, Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem. But anyway, I know that a half an hour, I know that you have another appointment after this one. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart of taking the time and talking about this.
My pleasure. Let's do it again.
I can't wait for the next time. And I wish you all the best. Shabbat Shalom till next time.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom. We still have a few days. Take care.